Adobe didn't just dominate creative software, they controlled it. Behind that control were hidden cancellation fees exceeding $200, deceptive checkout screens, and a subscription trap nobody could escape. The FTC hit them with a $150 million settlement. Adobe's revenue is higher than ever, yet the stock has collapsed, the CEO is stepping down, and somehow the downfall still feels satisfying. So what exactly is going on? In 2013, Adobe made a move that would change the creative world and lock it down. The company retired perpetual licenses for Photoshop, Illustrator, and the rest of its flagship lineup. No more one-time purchases, no more owning your tools. From that moment, every designer, photographer, and filmmaker had to pay monthly or lose access entirely. The new Creative Cloud subscription promised non-stop updates and seamless collaboration. It sounded like progress. In reality, it created a system where Adobe could extract money every single month, with no end in sight. The numbers exploded. By 2015, Adobe's annual recurring revenue had tripled. By 2024, revenue soared to $19 billion, 5 times what it was a decade earlier. Creative Cloud became the industry standard, not by choice, but by necessity. For professionals and agencies, there was no real alternative. The software was everywhere, and so were the monthly bills. But this new model came with a hidden catch. The more customers were locked in, the more valuable each subscription became, not just from monthly payments, but from making it as hard as possible to leave. Adobe's incentives shifted. Retention at any cost. Every extra month squeezed out of a reluctant subscriber meant millions more in revenue. The company built a fortress around its products, and inside, users found themselves trapped by fine print, confusing terms, and penalties buried deep in the checkout flow. Adobe's dominance was absolute, but the seeds of resentment were already planted. The subscription pivot wasn't just about steady income, it was about control, and that control would soon become the source of Adobe's biggest problems. The real engine behind Adobe's subscription machine is the annual paid monthly plan, APM for short. On the surface, it looks simple. Pay a low monthly rate, cancel anytime. But the fine print tells a different story. Hidden behind a tiny info icon or buried at the bottom of a dense legal paragraph is the early termination fee. Cancel before your 12 months are up, and Adobe hits you with a charge equal to half the remaining contract value. For the average user, that means an unexpected $180 to $220 penalty, often revealed only after clicking through 3 or more screens. The checkout process is a maze by design. The early termination fee disclosure is tucked away, sometimes as a tooltip you have to hover over, sometimes as a single sentence lost in a wall of terms. The dollar amount is almost never visible until it is too late. If you try to cancel, you are funneled through a gauntlet. Manage subscription, pick a reason, review a warning, confirm again. At any point, backing out means your subscription and the early termination fee live on. Internal support tickets show agents relying on templates that automatically add the fee, unless a customer fights hard enough to get it removed. Every step is friction, every screen a hurdle. The system is built to maximize confusion and hesitation, keeping customers locked in just a little longer. Adobe's own internal memos admit that making cancellation easier would cost millions. For years, the company chose profit over clarity, betting that most users would give up before finding the exit. And when the bills landed, the outrage began to spill out, across forums, Reddit, and eventually into the hands of regulators. Screenshots, invoices, and angry threads piled up like evidence in a courtroom. On Adobe, moderators tracked more than 2,800 posts about surprise charges and impossible cancellations, a CSV log spanning nearly a decade. Bank statements showed $199.99 yanked from accounts after users tried to escape. Pixel Forge Studios, a small agency in Austin, posted 3 months of invoices and emails with Adobe support, each one showing the same $199.99 cancellation fee, no matter how many times they clicked to quit. Even Adobe's own community forum became a running archive of complaints, with hundreds of posts flagged and archived by moderators. The outrage did not just echo online, it became the backbone of a federal case. On June 17, 2024, the FTC filed a complaint in California laying out a damning pattern: hidden early termination fees, a maze of cancellation screens, and a system designed to keep money flowing long after customers wanted out. The complaint named not just Adobe, but 2 senior executives, holding leadership directly responsible. The hammer fell in March 2026. Adobe agreed to a settlement of $150 million, half as a civil penalty and half as direct redress to affected users. That is $75 million in cold, hard refunds and free services for those hit by the scheme. The order did not stop at money. It forced Adobe to put the real fee amount in plain sight before anyone entered a credit card. 1 click to cancel. No more hidden hurdles. For the first time, the receipts matched the consequence. Forums that once documented frustration now circulated the settlement order. The community that built the case watched as the fortress cracked. Adobe's revenue kept climbing, but the foundation of trust had been shattered. So what exactly is going on? Adobe's revenue chart is a straight shot upward: $4.2 billion in 2015 and $19.3 billion by 2024. On paper, the company looks unstoppable, but Wall Street is not buying it. The share price, once near $720, now hovers around $200. That is a 72% plunge. Market capitalization has crashed below $100 billion, erasing a decade of gains. The old tech premium is gone. Adobe's PE ratio has collapsed to about 14, a number that would make any growth company sweat. And then came the boardroom bombshell. On July 15, 2025, Chief Executive Officer Shantanu Narayan announced he was stepping down after nearly 2 decades at the top. There was no named successor, just a press release, and a 9% stock drop in a single day. Investors are left asking the same question as everyone else: how does a company pull in record profits but lose the market's trust? The numbers do not add up. Something deeper is broken. Firefly was supposed to be Adobe's answer to the AI revolution, a bold leap into generative creativity. 13 billion images poured out in its first year, fueling headlines and earnings calls. But inside creative circles, the mood soured fast. Artists and photographers accused Adobe of scraping public images to train Firefly's models, often without consent. The company insisted it used only licensed and public domain content, but the details were murky. Stock contributors who had uploaded millions of images to Adobe's own marketplace found their work feeding an algorithm that could now undercut their livelihood. The backlash didn't stop at copyright. A freelance video editor, bound by a strict non-disclosure agreement with a film client, discovered that using Firefly-generated assets could violate his contract. Adobe's terms granted an automatic license for commercial use, even if a client's agreement said otherwise. When the editor pressed for clarity, support told him Firefly outputs were public domain. The client pulled the project, and the editor was left with a $2,400 loss and a potential breach of contract. Under pressure, Adobe revised its policy in July 2025, adding opt-outs and clarifying that Firefly images would not override non-disclosure agreements. But for many, the trust was already broken. The very users Adobe needed, designers, editors, photographers, now saw the company's AI bet as a threat, not a tool. In chasing the future, Adobe had managed to alienate the creative community that built its empire. The $20 billion Figma deal was supposed to buy Adobe breathing room. Instead, it blew up in public. Regulators on both sides of the Atlantic lined up to block the merger, calling it a threat to competition in design software. In June 2024, after months of legal wrangling and mounting antitrust pressure, Adobe walked away, leaving behind a $1 billion breakup fee paid straight to its would-be rival. Figma, now flush with cash, didn't slow down. By 2025, its annual recurring revenue hit $800 million, with enterprise clients migrating away from Adobe's walled garden. Canva, meanwhile, stormed the public markets with a $40 billion initial public offering, snapping up small agencies and freelancers who once thought Creative Cloud was the only option. The fortress that kept customers locked in was now full of exits. Agencies like Pixelforge and Creative Hive announced mass migrations, citing lower costs and fewer headaches. With every failed acquisition and every new competitor, Adobe's grip on the creative world slipped a little more. Adobe's cash keeps flowing, but trust bleeds out, and competitors swarm. The $150 million blow from the FTC, the AI backlash, and the failed Figma deal signal the reckoning regulators and users demanded. Power built on exploitation never lasts. The market's message? Even giants can fall. Drop your thoughts below.